All right, Mike. All right, Mark.
Mark will call the meeting to order, and I've got a statement to cover us having an electronic meeting. So I will start with that. Good afternoon. I would like to call this virtual meeting of the Stream Protection and Forestry Subcommittee to order. Generally, public bodies are prohibited from meeting electronically under the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. However, emergency language approved by the Governor and the General Assembly in the 2020 Appropriations Act allows us to move forward with certain restrictions that I will outline. Before I review those provisions, please let me take a moment to review how this meeting will work. We want to allow for participation by committee members, staff, and members of the public who wish to comment. However, it is essential that we are able to manage the conversation effectively. I am chairing this meeting today. David Bryan and Christine Watlington are assisting with presentations, responding to comments, and with the overall coordination of the meeting. Please be patient with all of us as we work through this. We understand and appreciate the challenges. Chapter 1289 of the 2020 Acts of Assembly, known as the Budget Bill, includes language addressing the ability of public bodies to conduct electronic meetings without the need for a quorum being present in a single physical location. These are known as electronic meetings. This language was submitted as an amendment by the Governor and approved by the General Assembly at their April 22, 2020 reconvened session. The Governor subsequently signed the budget bill, and the bill was effective as of July 1, 2020. The budget bill allows public bodies to hold electronic meetings when the Governor has declared a state of emergency pursuant to 44-146.17 if, 1, the nature of the declared emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe for the public body or governing board to assemble in a single location. 2, the purpose of the meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the public body and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. That's 4-0.01G. The department has determined that, 1, the nature of the declared emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe for the public body or governing board to assemble in a single location. The department finds that, 2, the purpose of this meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required and necessary to continue operations of the public body and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. The department will, 3, make available a recording or transcript of the meeting on its website in accordance with the timeframes established in 2.23707 and 2.23707.1 of the Code of Virginia. Those are FOIA code references. The comments in the chat room will also be preserved as a public record. Official minutes of this meeting will be drafted and posted in accordance with regular procedures. The budget bill does not allow an electronic meeting to discuss or transact business for any purpose. Rather, agenda items from the public body plans to take up must A, be statutorily required, or B, be necessary to continue operations and discharge lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. The budget bill requires compliance with the provisions of 2.23708.2. Therefore, in accordance with 2.23708.2, point D, point 2, public bodies must include a telephone number that may be used to notify the public body of any interruption in the telephonic or video broadcast of the meeting. In the event that a disruption occurs, participants should contact Christine by phone or text at 804-564-1897. You might want to write that down, 804-564-1897. Additionally, if there is an interruption in the broadcast, the meeting must be suspended until public access is restored. Those provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act not addressed by the budget bill remain in effect. Before we continue with the business portion of the meeting, I will ask David to call the roll for subcommittee members and anticipated staff, or that should be participating staff. Other participants will be recorded through the chat window. So make sure your name shows up in the chat box. If you are participating by phone and your name is not called, please call or text Christine at 804-564-1897. In addition, if at any time you lose connection and are unable to reconnect, please contact Christine at the same number. Now we'll turn to David for the calling of the roll. David, that's
all right.
you.
Thank you, Mark. Again, for those who are non-voting participants out there, I see, for example, Chad and Chris from NRCS. Those who aren't voting participants, please put your name in the chat box. We're just going to call down the roll for voting members for purposes of quorum. Aaron Lucas, Headwaters.
Okay.
All right. And I apologize if I say anything names wrong here. Also, I do want to mention, if you are filling in for someone, please let us know that as well. Secondly, Anna Killius.
Here.
All right. Brian Hoffman. All right. No Brian Hoffman or no one from Friends of the Rappahannock. All right. Charlie Wooten.
Present.
Thank you. Chris Barber.
Present.
Thank you. Elizabeth Dellinger.
Present.
Thanks. Eric Paulson.
Here.
Thank you. Gary Boring.
Here.
Thank you. Jim Riddell.
Here. Here.
Thanks. Luke Longenecker.
Here.
Thank you. Matt Kowalski.
Present.
Great. Michael Tabor.
Present.
Right. Nick Livesey.
Here.
Robert Bradford.
Here.
Thank you. Stephanie Kitchen.
Here.
Thanks. Tim Higgs.
Here.
Thank you. Todd Grow.
This is Dean Cumbia representing Todd Grow.
Great. Glad to have you, Dean. Tom Turner. All right. Anybody representing John Marshall's district? All right. Take that as a no. And Trisha Mays. Trisha, are you there? I see you on the right. All right. I think Trisha is here. So we have, well, let me just do a brief count. We have 18 out of 20 members. We have met quorum, and we'll be able to, if we get to that point, we'll be able to proceed with voting. That's it. Hand it back to you, Mark.
All right, well, thank you. Yeah, my mic's on. All right. I want to
Here.
explain further. Who is that?
Here.
Is that Tricia?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I want to explain further how we will handle participation by subcommittee members, staff, and the public. Everyone except the individual presenting materials for an agenda item will be muted. Once the presentation is completed, the committee members and only committee members will be muted for discussion. David and Christine will assist me with ensuring members are recognized when they have questions or comments. As needed, staff will be unmuted to address questions or concerns. Members of the public will be able to ask questions and provide input by utilizing the chat box function only. As time allows, we will respond to those comments and questions. So now we can proceed with the business of the subcommittee as outlined on the agenda that you see before you. So we're to item B, presentation of the draft portable fencing specification. And I will attempt to handle that. Of course, the purpose of all of this is to meet the mandate of the General Assembly, ideally without detracting from the value of the other stream fencing B&Ps, of which there are 19 variations. And just for your information, the draft that we're considering that you see before us was authored internally at DCR to help get us going. David Bryan and Raleigh Coleman, Carl Thelgoyne, Marissa Rowland, and I met twice by conference call at the end of July and once in August. And then I sent our draft out to the subcommittee on the 25th. Again, it's just our shot at it to get us started. And it's patterned after our CCI or continuing conservation initiative practices. It's not predicated on a cost share percentage. And we've tried to keep it as simple as possible. And so doing it doesn't make reference to any NRCS underlying component specifications. And personally, I kind of hope it might fill a niche not covered by some of the other stream fencing B&Ps. Maybe it'll be applicable to renters or maybe a dairyman wishing to graze crop residues or something like that. At any rate, I'm not going to read this word for word unless you really want me to, but we propose to call it WP2P and nothing special about that, but P for portable. This should be a familiar pattern to you, description and purpose. That's pretty much a takeoff of stock language for the CCI practices. And making reference to all live streams or live water. The next paragraph, the purpose of this one-year practice is to offer an incentive payment to exclude livestock. That's pretty darn close to stock language as well. Under B, policies and specifications, that item number 1 is based on stock CCI language, obviously making reference to providing portable fencing system. And remember that the Bay Bill directs us to develop a portable stream fencing practice. That's the only direction we have. So there you go, a portable fencing system under policy B1. Second paragraph, B2, no minimum fencing standard required. Exclude livestock from all live streams and live water. Portable fence may be placed at the top of the bank or with a preferred buffer setback. We would certainly prefer a buffer if at all possible. Item 3, of course, there's a lot of, this is unique. Portable fencing system is designed to be moved with the livestock herd. This is sort of a big deal, I think, as the participant rotates their animals through different fields and or farms. As such, the sizing of the fencing system should be based upon the field or fields in the system with the longest length of stream bank protected to ensure that this portable system may be effectively utilized in all fields. So here we're sort of picturing a technician going out, meeting with the farmer, and if this is the option of most interest, the district technician, through conversation and observation, conversation with the participant and observation of the farming operation, will gain a sense of how the herd is being managed or how the herds are being managed and where they have access to the stream. And then wherever there's the longest length of stream bank protected, in a given field or multiple fields if they're cattle at all fields. Sizing the system based on the longest length of stream bank protected. Could have a producer with multiple herds on different farms, or produce a simple case where there's just a herd and a field. That would be rather straightforward. B4, since the system is designed to serve a livestock herd as it's rotated through various farms or fields as applicable, the participant can sign up for one portable fencing system per separately managed herd. Doesn't have to. I mean, you can certainly sign up for and deal with all herd or herds in one sign up, but certainly can consider a separate sign up per herd. Item 5 or B5 is just standard stock CCI language, no flash grazing. Item 6, B6. Due to the temporary nature of this fencing practice, provision of water is responsibility of the producer. And of course, there's a myriad of options available. But we thought that to entertain the notions of paying on water systems or the creation of water systems or crossings and the like would certainly complicate things. And truly, portable fencing is rather ephemeral. It moves around with the herd. It was our choice at the time not to deal with a watering system or the provision of water. Sling the portable fencing across the creek wherever there's a suitable access point. Typically, it's one that's self-evident, and then move the portable fencing on down the other side of the stream. Again, the mandate from the General Assembly is a portable fencing practice. Item 7, stock language found in all the CCI practices must not be in lifespan from any other conservation program. Item 8 or B8, that's pretty much stock language. Maintained for 1 year following the calendar year of certification. Lifespan begins January 1. Agrees to maintain all practice components for the lifespan, subject to spot check. That's standard language. B9, eligible for re-enrollment once every 5 program years for the replacement of the portable fencing system. And we chose 5 years because a portable fencing system ought to last 3 to 5 years. Under rates, of course, we had to monkey with this a little bit and chose to make payment of 20 cents per linear foot of stream bank, predicated upon some extension information that portable fencing costs roughly 25 cents a foot. So we chose 20 cents. Nothing too magical about that, but note that that's about equivalent of 80% cost share. Again, calculated based on the field with the longest length of stream bank. Again, it might be just one field in question. Might be multiple fields. So if that's the case with the herd rotating around, then just choose the longest length of stream bank. Obviously, the payment will not include areas where livestock have access. That's standard. In parentheses, it says, i.e. hardened crossings. And I would just add in there that maybe they're not truly hardened in the sense of our standard cost share hardened crossing, but certainly ought to be suitable. Payment made after field visit by district staff to document the system is installed, where the livestock are currently located, and is functioning as intended. And then finally, D, policy D, technical responsibility assigned to qualified technical DCR, district staff in consultation where appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. Again, pretty much standard language there. So I hope you all had a chance to read it in advance. And again, I think from our internal DCR team, there was an objective clearly of meeting the mandate from the General Assembly, and then also creating something that's fairly straightforward and simple to administer on the part of the district staff. And so that's the intent, which is often far different from what becomes reality. But as you all with experience in tech business, we almost never leave anything well enough alone, and there's always room for improvement as we gain experience. So without any, questions, I hope that was an adequate presentation. David, if you wanted to add anything, by all means, jump in there. I did not see, is Raleigh on the call? If he's got anything as part of our team. Carl, I think you're on the call. Marissa, if I missed anything glaring, by all means, jump in.
I think you did a good job, Mark.
Is that okay? If that's adequate, then I'd like to open it up to discussion by subcommittee members. Anybody want to take a first shot and get things rolling, or do you want to go directly to a vote? Don't have to.
Hey, Mark, this is Matt Kowalski.
Yes,
you all
Matt.
You all know I'm not shy, so I'll jump right in if you're ready.
Thank you.
The first question that I have is, repeatedly you referred to this practice as portable, but the bill actually refers to it as temporary. So I'm curious why you guys decided to immediately move to all portable option rather than it only being a temporary option.
I'm looking at the Bay Bill map, and let me read the relevant section. The Department of Conservation and Recreation shall, no later than July 1, 2020, establish through the Soil and Water Conservation Technical Advisory Committee and with stakeholder input, a portable stream fencing practice for inclusion in the VAX manual. There it is. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. So I'm looking at the one that was sent out as the enrolled on line 57, and it says temporary. So that's where I got the temporary. I was looking at the document that Mark had sent out a couple weeks ago.
All right. Now that has to do with the consequences of us not meeting our Bay WIP goals and potential legislation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, but that's my off-the-cuff take on that. So again, Matt, I think our focus right now deals with the reference to portable stream fencing practice.
Gotcha.
Correct. It is our intent to meet this enactment clause, and that's very specific about it being portable. So that's what everything has been geared towards.
Although, Matt, to your point, portable stream fencing, by nature of being portable, it's going to be temporary in a given place. But we do have to design the practice to be around that, what the General Assembly stated.
Sure. And yeah, and one does not exclude the other. And it's
Right. I would say all portable stream fencing is certainly temporary.
Right. And what I'm concerned about as we begin these, or as we continue these discussions, is that temporary materials means different things conceptually to different people. You know, some people hear temporary or portable and they're picturing polywire and step-in posts, but any materials that can be removed and transported can serve the purpose of being portable.
And T-posts can be removed if you've got enough energy and time.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's tough.
But yeah, as we got started, I just wanted to make sure that people are realizing that there are going to be different material options.
Oh, absolutely. And we're thinking in terms of portability, move it around with the herd. When they're in field A, the portable fencing is in place. If they're removed from field A and taken to field B, pick up your portable fencing material and put it in field B. That's just our notion for the time being. Hey, you know.
Mark, Charlie Wooden.
Hey, Charlie.
I've got a question. I've been looking at this, and so we're going to pay for it, and we're going to have a lifespan of 1 year, which means he keeps it up for 1 year. He can carry that portable fence over to his regular farm or wherever and use it as temporary cross fencing or whatever, and then come back in year 5 and apply for another portable fencing system. I don't really have a problem with that, except we're only getting 1 year out of a potentially 5-year lifespan practice. I mean, it looks like to me it would make more sense to make it a yearly practice that's renewable for maybe a maximum of 5 years, to give the guy an incentive to keep it on the ground more than 1 year. I mean, if he's using portable tanks and bringing water over to him, he may get his fence, he'd do that for a year and say, the heck with this, and you know, I don't have to keep it up anymore. I'm done.
True. That's certainly a weakness. So your thought is that perhaps an alternative would be that this 20 cents a foot for stream bank protection would be something that could be paid yearly for up to 5 years.
You're only looking at $200 per 1,000 feet of stream bank. So
Yeah.
you know, pay him the 20 cents up front, like this is set up to do. And then if just like a cover crop, if he wants to apply next year and keep it there, pay him another 20 cents a foot and put a cap on it of can be renewed up to 5 times or something like that. I'd like to get some lifespan out of whatever we're going to put into this puppy, because I understand, you know, like Matt said, you can have all kinds of fencing, which is acceptable if it keeps them out of the stream. But 1 year doesn't seem to me like gaining a lot for what we're going to go through.
I can't disagree with you. And anyone else have thoughts in this regard? You could turn around, just make it a 5-year practice.
Hey, Mark, this
I
is
agree.
Elizabeth.
Hey, Elizabeth.
I guess my question is, are we paying for the materials? Is that the intent of the practice, or are we paying for the stream bank exclusion? Because
Well,
if you're paying for the stream bank exclusion, then that's where Charlie's point comes in, and I wouldn't disagree of, you know, make it an annual payment or something like that. But I guess it gets back to the intent. Are you paying for the exclusion like you are in CCI practices, or are you paying for the materials like you are with a SL6 practice?
Well, we're paying for the exclusion, I would say, again, using the standard model of CCI. Now, obviously, they're going to take the money and put a tank of gas in the truck, or they're going to go out and buy some, you know, portable fencing system. But they don't get paid till we see the system in place.
This is David. I would agree. We're paying for exclusion, and the 20 cents thing, we were sort of trying to come up with a reasonable way of figuring out an appropriate rate. And that was just based upon the fact, as Mark said earlier, that the VCE extension study a couple years ago put the average cost of portable fencing at around 25 cents a foot. So this was a pretty substantial percentage of that. But again, that was what we based the payment off of, but y'all are right that we're paying for exclusion, not necessarily the material.
This is Robert.
Hey, Robert,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I agree that I think 1 year life is short. I would favor at least a 3, maybe a 5-year lifespan. If it's in them for only 1 year and you're expecting to do spot checks, it's probably the burden of the district to spot check every temporary fence practice, every year that one gets put on the ground to make sure it's being used correctly. But the lifespan, that was one of the first things that's shot out at me as something that didn't really work.
Well, in light of the nature of a portable fencing system being somewhat ephemeral, delicate, maybe there's some merit to Charlie's idea to make it a annual renewable, almost like a cover crop, which would mean the technician is out there on an annual basis visiting the farm and seeing that the portable fencing is in place and doing what it's intended. Now, whether you pay 20 cents for each of those 5 years, that's another question, but certainly going for something that's renewable or straightforward 5-year lifespan makes it a little bit more worthwhile. As Charlie says, $200 for 1,000 feet of stream bank. We're not talking about a whole lot of money. It's not that tantalizing.
And Mark, the reason I suggested making it renewable is I'm assuming that the thrust of this was people that were renting land and didn't want to invest in. So if you made it renewable for up to 5 years, if he kept the land for 5 years, he gets 5 years out of it. If he got kicked off in year 2, we paid for 2 years and he's done with the land anyway. At least you get, you meet both conditions, I think, where the leasee could, he could walk away if he had to, but we would get some lifespan out of it up to 5 years.
That's a good point. If it's a 5-year lifespan and he gets kicked off the land in year 3, then there's a repayment issue with which to deal. And again, when you're dealing with such modest funds, it might not be worth the effort. I'm empathetic to that. Anybody else have a comment about lifespan?
This is David again. I think it's a great idea. I think that if we go this route, we will have to adjust the rate, just keeping in mind that we have CCI practices right now that are 5-year practices that pay less than what has been proposed for a permanent exclusion. Well, actually, I check it's 50 cents a foot, but if you did 20 cents per year, that's going to add up to more than the 50 cents per foot. So anyway, we'd have to do some adjustment on the rate, but I like the concept.
This is Trisha. Could you do like the 50 cent for an initial and then 20 cent renewal?
Well, again, the basic CCI is 50 cents, and that gets us permanent fence. But I mean, I'm not saying no, I'm just making an observation. Today,
Yeah, it's a good idea, but I think it would be a nightmare in tracking. I don't know how we would do that.
So could I just share how I feel about this? All right. So they told us we had to make a practice. We've made a practice. Whether people actually do it or not, oh well.
Well, we do want to make a sincere effort.
Well, we're paying the price that it was determined to cost per foot, and we're not expecting any type of buffer width or any type of standards at all. I think that's a pretty good offer, considering that there is that law about it being mandatory coming down.
Well, what do you think of, Aaron, of the notion that Charlie puts forth that it be an annually renewable practice, gets a technician out in the field on an annual basis for a new sign-up? And
Well,
to accommodate
we're already going to be doing a gigantic amount of spot checks with these new animal waste practices. So yeah, it should just be annually re-enrollable.
Okay, so from what I hear you saying, you are enticed by Charlie's notion that it be an annually renewable. Now then,
I think that's the best way to handle it. Yes.
And then we would, so if at 20 cents renewed annually, that means a 5-year practice paying $1. And our baseline CCI right now pays 50 cents, not $1.
Well, you already know that I want it to be 25 cents because traditionally we've paid in 25-cent increments, and I have an obsession with things being like even. But yeah, I mean, the 20-cent number came from somewhere.
Yes,
it's not just a random number. So,
could you share the reference to how many years back and where you got that 20-cent, what extension budget you're speaking of, and who drew up that budget, if you don't mind?
Who is that
share
speaking?
The budget? This is Jim Riddell with the Cattlemen Association.
Okay, all right. David,
Can
I think
share the reference on, and when that, what year is that budget from, and who developed that budget, just so we know what we're referring to?
It was Virginia Cooperative Extension in the Valley. It was like the last 5 years. I will see if I can find it on this call, but if not, I can send it to you.
What was 5 years ago may not be exact. I think it's a little bit lower than it should be. It may not be current, so we need to at least know where that budget, know the details of that budget you're looking at, I think.
Fair enough.
Hey, this is Michael Tabor here. It's a follow-up question on that. Do you know the type of materials that Virginia Cooperative Extension did their study on, whether it was a polywire, step-in post minimum, or if it was some different fencing system?
David, do you know, are you referring to the paper that was put out by Matt Boer with Cooperative Extension?
I think that was probably it.
It was Matt Boer and Austin Horn. Okay, so the materials in that particular publication were semi-permanent fencing materials, like fiberglass posts, the plasticized posts, and usually high tensile wire, not polywire. Just to give you an idea.
Right. So it actually will be a little bit more expensive. But yes, that was it, Matt. And I did just find it. If anybody wants that, I can send it to them.
Michael Tabor here again. Was the charger included as part of that cost?
I don't have the paper right here in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it was not. That was just the cost of the fence.
Okay.
And Austin just typed in no, and he was involved in that paper. So.
Thank you, Austin.
Okay, I would think that would need to be taken into account because, I mean, it's a significant cost compared to the other materials, and without the charger, that fence is essentially useless.
Well, of course, yeah, right.
This is Lou Longenecker. Just to the point, I mean, I think we need to have a discussion because we don't just need another practice that just sits in the manual and doesn't get put on the ground. I think we need to do some thinking about, getting some good things in here that makes it adoptable. And one thing I worry about is, moving from, I know it's portable and we're somewhat stuck with the mandate, but I just have a hard time seeing this being practical moving, polywire from farm to, from field to field to field on the rotation. I mean, I guess coming up with I would see something more practical being, wooden post on 150-foot centers with 1 or 2 strands of polywire with some step-ins that it's not portable, but it can be. It's temporary, and maybe a temporary portable system, not, sticking with poly wire and that's the only option, because I don't see that being adopted by farmers, at least in my area. They have enough on their plate. I don't see them moving every time with the herd, personally.
I completely agree with you, Luke. And one of my concerns is that we're not going to see people adopting this because it's inconvenient, even if it is possible to pick this up and move it when you move the herd. I'm also concerned about the administration of what the district would have to do to make sure that this is being used correctly. If we say it's portable and we're only paying them for enough to do the longest stretch of stream bank on the longest portion of anywhere where they move the herd, you could make the argument that the technician would have to go out and check to make sure that the fence has been properly installed each time it's moved to a different location. I don't think anybody wants to do that, but in order to make sure that it's being done correctly, that is one example of the administration of that I'm concerned about. I think farmers aren't going to want to pick it up and move it. I'm also concerned that the materials are not going to indeed last 5 years if they're moved on a regular basis.
Like the last 5 years.
Matt, you have some good points. I think that the one thing we got to remember, other than the fact we're mandated to do a portable fencing spec, is that we've got a ton of other options out there. So this is really meant to fill a niche as opposed to, replacing all the WP2N, WP2W, SL6s, and all those other things that are out there currently. This truly does fit a very strange niche.
And in the course of a given year of lifespan, I don't think it's a reasonable expectation for there to be a technician visiting the farm operation to vouch that the portable system in field A is now in field B and functioning.
That language on verifications is basically standard language for all VAC specs. It doesn't mean that the district is going to check everything every year. It just means it's eligible for spot check, essentially.
Actually, the language actually says the portable fencing system is installed in the field where livestock are currently located.
Right, that's it. Then you walk away for the year.
But what if they move the livestock, then it hasn't been checked where the livestock currently are. I agree with you, a spot check should only be necessary once a year, but the language in section C says the payment will be made after a field visit. And it's got that section that says where livestock are currently located.
Right. And so you read into that if the livestock are rotated to a different field, that it's time for the technician to revisit?
I'm worried that is the obligation that you're putting on the technicians, yes.
Frankly, I don't see that, but it's understandable. Okay.
Yeah, that would not be the intent.
However, if you move to a annually renewable for up to 5 years or 3, why then that would get the technician out a second and then a third, possibly a fourth and then a fifth time. But again, it's just to see that the livestock where they are at the time are properly excluded. Yeah.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
This is Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Me and Chance have been wondering about this portable fencing. And we were going to allow, and it goes back to Matt's point of allowing all materials. We see a lot of electrified one-strand barbed wire up here. And, the fencing, I know we're not going by fencing specs, but is that going to be allowed in this type of scenario?
If the technician believes it's doable and the farmer says this will do, I would at this point say, yeah. If we don't have a standard that says it's got to be this or that, it's what the farmer says will work with his particular herd and his management style.
I understand, and you know, a single strand electrified barbed wire does work in a lot of cases. It's just, you know, we're just taught never to electrify barbed wire.
Well, if it can work in some cases, then maybe there's a need for some flexibility in your understanding.
Yeah, I agree with you totally.
Yeah. I mean,
I just want to clarify that for the group, because I know everybody's thinking about temporary poly wire, this, that, and the other. But you know, a single strand of barbed wire is pennies a foot, and you can throw a charger on it, and you know it does the job of temporary electric with a longer, you know, more durable fence.
True. Might be a little painful rolling it up and moving it to another field.
Mark, this is Jim Riddell again. Could you look at part B and number 3? And I just want to make sure that there's nothing in that paragraph that says that someone could not put up electric fence along a creek, leave it there, and be part of this program. It doesn't have to be moved. It doesn't.
Correct.
There's nothing in your document that says it can be put up. Is that correct?
I agree, Jim.
Hey, Mark. It's
Yes.
Elizabeth. To Jim's point, why is it that we're focusing only on the field with the longest footprint? If we're paying for exclusion and the cattle have access to 3 fields, why are we not paying him to have them all excluded? If he wants to put up a fence that excludes them from all 3, but it's portable, then yeah, they're excluded. He doesn't have to worry about the management of it. We're getting Bay model credits or not, however it is, for all the water body being excluded. But if he wants to go with something portable, he can, and he can move it every time too. I'm just wondering why we're focusing on only the field with the longest stream bank and not any fields or all fields that have any stream bank in them.
Well, I think our little internal group working on this draft was thinking of the mandate in terms of portability. And that means to me, you having the ability to move it from field to field and along with the herd. And so being a portable fence, why would you leave it in place in a field where it's not needed? You move it with the herd. So if you rotate your animals through 3 separate fields, pick the field, make the payment on the one that has the greatest amount of stream bank protected. That's all. Nothing magical about it. You certainly raise a good point. But again, I think it's predicated upon this notion of portability, for right or wrong.
Mark, to Elizabeth's point, and maybe you guys intended this, but keep in mind that if you're moving the animals from one side of the stream to another side of the stream and you don't want the animals getting in it, you need to exclude both sides of the stream so that when you rotate them into the other field, they're not in the stream. You can't pick up the fence and move it and move that whole herd if you only have one fence.
That's right.
Hey, Mark, the predication of portability, is that portability with the herd, or is that portability in that if the farmer loses the land, he can very easily take everything that he put on it back home with him without having to pull up fence posts and dig up wires and pipeline and all of that? I guess it's the question of portability, and which portability option are you thinking?
I think we were thinking in terms of the herd. Somebody's got a lease of land that's got multiple fields and he rotates. He can take a portable fence and move it where it needs to be, whether it's on one side of the stream with a little loop that allows them access to the water, or moves it to the other side of the stream and flips the fence, so to speak. Although truly, as you note, if the lease is lost, it's the portable fence is easily removed and used elsewhere.
I guess I'm just wondering, most farmers are not wanting to move a portable electric fence every time they move the herd. They're going to want to put something up and leave it there and just look at it before they turn the herd in. I can't imagine anybody that would want the added headache of having to move one fence every time they go. They're probably going to put something up and leave it. So that's why I was wondering, and I understand y'all's intention of, or interpretation of portability. I'm just wondering if we should consider the other interpretation of portability when we're thinking about this spec.
Well, I think for the farmer who doesn't want the burden of moving a portable fence from one side of the stream to the next or from one field to the other, and they want something a little bit more permanent, then they might want to choose the CCI SE1 practice, which pays 50 cents a foot, but it's got a 5-year lifespan.
Well, then back to that point, maybe we should consider upping the CCI SE1 rate.
Well, we did.
I know that
it used to be, the CCI used to be $1 a foot.
Right, and then it went down when the other CCI options came into place. In light of this spec, and I know we can't do it today, it's not an agenda item, but it might be something we want to consider raising again to be more in line with,
well,
with this spec and the others.
What I meant was when it was $1 a foot, I don't think I saw a single person putting new fence up using that practice.
Well, some certainly did, but it was intended, as you well know.
I mean, I'm sure someone somewhere did, but yeah. I just physically, Aaron Lucas did not see it happen.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And the CCIs are predicated upon a pre-existing fencing system, or whatever it is. It's already out there. Here's a buck to maintain it. And that's fundamentally different from a portable fencing practice. I suspect that the General Assembly had in mind. But yeah, we gotta coordinate the pricing, because I don't think it's in the taxpayers' interest to detract from the attractiveness of some of these other practices where there's a little bit more permanence.
Mark, this is Luke. I agree with you on that, but I also really agree with Elizabeth and Jim. I mean, I really don't like B section 3, as I feel like we got to look at this mandate and kind of the goal of it. And that goal is to get more practices on rented land. And if you look at this spec as written, I personally don't see it being adopted. I don't want to just push this through just to please the file, if you will. I mean, I would prefer to see something that is, in my mind, we can debate the definition of temporary versus portable, but I view it as on rented land. I think it would be best and adopted most widely if we did a low cost, it stays in place throughout this lifespan, whether that be a 1 or 2 or 3 up to 5, and they can take it with them. If they need to, if they lose the lease or they get booted or whatever happens, they have that option, because a big obstacle in my district is over half the land is rented land, and they can't afford or invest in permanent infrastructure on a farm that they may lose in 2 years. So if we came up with a option to do 1 strand of hot barbed wire, 1 strand of high tensile electric with some infrastructure that can't be removed, I think we would actually get, I know for a fact I would get signed up in my district. If I ask them to put up polywire and move it with the herd, that's not going to happen. We're basically going to have another practice that sits in the manual and doesn't get used. So I think we need to back up and, I hear the mandate and the portable, but we got to say the intent was, in my understanding, the intent was to get more infrastructure, get more exclusion on rented land. And that's got to be part of this.
Can I just add, it would almost certainly have to be top of bank with no buffer requirement.
Well, that's an option. And I would say that if somebody wanted to sign up for this and preferred to put in something that was a little more substantial than truly a portable system with step-in posts and polywire, they're certainly welcome to put in a wooden post every 100, 150 feet or whatever would work, and put up a single strand of electric bar, for that matter. If they don't want to go the CCI SE1 route.
Hey, Mark, I've got a question regarding the rate, and it's pretty basic. So the state has recognized that they're willing to pay 50 cents a foot to maintain some kind of exclusion fence with no standard through the CCI SE1. And
Yeah.
there's been some discussion in this group to make this a 5-year practice. So why wouldn't the state pay the same amount of money to achieve the same function, which is stream exclusion? Why wouldn't they just pay 50 cents a foot for this, for people to put new portable fencing up? It's achieving the same thing as the CCI SE1.
I have to strongly agree with that. It's Michael Taylor here that for 20 cents a foot, I just see the farmer, if they really want to do this, I think they'll do it on their own. They won't go through the motions of doing the paperwork and dealing with the restrictions for that little of an incentive.
What if, Michael, it was a 5-year renewable? And
I think that would make things better. I mean, especially for the rented land crowd, we need something like that where they can drop out, not do the whole 5 years if they lose the place, but drop out 2 or 3 years whenever they lose it. Definitely, but at the same time, I still wonder if the 20 cents, especially with the charger not being factored in with it, if that's just too light of an incentive.
Well, what if it was 10 cents a foot renewable for 5 years, and so the max would be ultimately 50 cents, which is the CCI SE1?
Well,
I don't think we're at a point where we're just throwing out numbers. We need to look at, the study that was done, what those numbers are based on, look at actual costs right now. And I don't think we're at a place where we can guess 10 cents a year or 15 cents a year. I don't feel comfortable with that personally.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that too. And we agree. The headache factor, that if it's too much of a headache for the farmer, they're not going to fool with it. I mean, we really want to put something out there that's going to be used.
I agree with that. That's what I've been kind of pushing. I don't want to create a practice that doesn't get used.
Well, I just said 10 cents a foot for 5-year renewables, such that it would be no more than what's been established as the rate for a CCI SE1, just as an upper limit.
At that rate, Mark, your initial payment probably wouldn't be enough to buy the materials.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, that's too low.
This is Chris again. I just, when you think about telling a producer he can re-enroll it for 5 years, I just don't know. Out here in Southwest, we're so poor as a district with cost share funds. We never have enough to meet our SL6 goals, much less a temporary fence goals, much less promising for re-enrollment for 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. Just the way you can't promise
re-enrollment. And how is it going?
Well, you can have some of our money.
Well, he's Southern Rivers, Aaron.
Well, I have a question. Do we not already somewhat have a portable spec already in the CCI SE1? I mean, could we just make a few tweaks to the CCI SE1 and call it the portable spec? Because right now that has no fence setbacks. It has no real requirements other than that it's intended to be permanent. So could we change that part of it and call the CCI SE1, like, basically make that practice the portable practice, maybe give it a new number, because these people who have permanent fences already in place, they're going to have some sort of a watering system to go with it to qualify for a CCI SL6 or something like that potentially.
Okay, this will become CCI SE2.
You got to throw in a P in there for portable.
Yes.
Well, the notion of tinkering with the CCI SE1 as it stands was certainly something we had talked about. But we declined for the moment while we were considering producing this straw dog BMP spec. Again, just to keep what the General Assembly wanted distinct from the current offerings. David, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but we did discuss.
Yeah, I think it really is just to fulfill the mandate on getting a new spec. I did have another sort of thing to add to the conversation, and this was fairly recent. In fact, it was like the end of last week. If we make this a 5-year practice, it will be eligible for what some of you all may know is called an RI practice, a resource improvement practice. So for those of you in the Bay model, there are essentially 2 different types of practices. There's your sort of regular cost share practices that get reported. And then there's other ones that just don't quite meet standard, but are still recognized to give something. And this is one that we could, if we switched it to a 5-year practice, we could count it as a resource improvement practice. That would also address Chris's issue of, which is totally legit, especially in the OCB. You can't straight up guarantee a producer that they're going to be able to sign up to this 5 years in a row as an annual practice. It's just not going to happen. I totally agree with them. So if we went the 5-year way, we may be able to eke some credit out of it, and I don't know, it's going to be a lot easier to manage as well. I'm not totally opposed to the idea, of an interpretation of portable, of taking, basically having a system that you could take up on rented land and move it, and just going ahead and paying for the full system, similar to what we do with the CCI SE1. I think that was what Luke was suggesting. But anyway, if we did that, again, I would recommend it be a 5-year practice so we could potentially get some credit along with all this.
So David, this is Stephanie Kitchen with Farm Bureau. Just to clarify, as is, there would be no credit?
As an annual practice, correct. But if we can make it into a 5-year credit, a 5-year practice, we can count it as a RI practice.
Thank you.
Well, what is the mandate, the instructions that we were supposed to make a practice? Does it say what type of lifespan it has to have?
Oh, heck no, Aaron, it's as plain can be. It says create a portable fencing practice.
Okay.
Right. It's just that literally when we were putting this together, until very recently, we didn't realize this could be counted as an RI. So that's why we just did it as it is. But knowing the new information, we're not opposed to switching it to a 5-year practice.
I think we should definitely, the groups kind of sounds like they're leaning towards the 5-year option, and making it where we can get some credits is definitely a great thing. My question is, though, how is this practice, if we did that, different than a CCI SE1?
Good question.
One difference is this doesn't provide any money for watering. It specifically says there is no funding available for watering.
But SE1 does not pay for watering either.
No, I'm aware of that. I'm just saying that it calls that out specifically.
Right, and Matt, just one thing on that, some of the reasoning behind that. So literally right now, if you look at our current suite of options available out there, permanent fencing to standard, the lowest we go for a 5-year lifespan is 55%. And since this would be not to standard, and we would just be counting as an RI, that would be about as high as we can go. So we did think about doing a traditional cost share practice. However, the WP2N at 55% would have to outcompete this. So we would be looking at, like a 35% or something like that cost share, which we didn't think was desirable. And hence why we ended up doing this payment per per linear foot of stream bank protected. So just want to give some background there.
Okay. So were you guys thinking that to provide water, the farmers might do like an SL6B or a WP2B for tax credit only? Or
we're thinking access to the stream.
But they
Unprotected
could be
access to the stream?
eligible for an SL6B.
SL6B will pay tax credit on an exclusion fence built to standard,
Well, that's the stream crossing or hardened access.
but not the hardened access.
It should pay for the watering system too. Tax credit on it, not pay for it, but tax credit on it.
Yeah, the
That is
SL6B is the alternative watering system tax credit, and the WP2B is the stream hardening.
If they're going to do that, then there's right back to not putting in any dollars. And if they were going to do it, they might just as well put it in for an SL6 instead of the tax credit.
Sure.
But
For the 5-year
I guess
lifespan.
I'm still wondering from the DCR interpretation of the CCI SE1, how is it stronger than this spec? Because from the district's perspective, I don't see how SE1 is stronger than this spec.
Well, the SE1 was made before we knew this was going to be a thing.
And it presumes some degree of permanence to the fence that's in place. I don't think anybody comes into the district office asking for CCI SE1 and you go out there and it's just portable fencing or single strand polywire. You'd say, well,
So
we
that
need to beef this up a
for
bit.
that permanence. So then for the permanence, we need to pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because if you go to your 10 cent a foot for the, the whole 50 cent a foot thing, I don't know what the answer is. I'm just thinking we're getting close on having two specs that are basically the same.
Yes, we are.
If we needed to, we could always see the CCI SE1 disappear into the abyss for forever. I think that, unfortunately, Elizabeth, I mean, yes, you're correct that these are very, very similar if we head this direction. But we've been mandated to put a portable fencing spec together. So if we end up with doubling it up, maybe next year the committee just decides to eliminate SE1 if we go that direction.
But is the creation of a whole new spec what we have to do, or can we edit the CCI SE1 and say it is now portable? This is the new spec that does that. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, Christine, do you have any input on
that? I think we could probably revise a spec to make it portable, but
just change the name.
I'm not looking at it from there's some significant differences, maybe not in practice, but at least in language between what we propose for the portable and what a CCI practice does. I get the point, and I do understand. I'm not sure they're the same, I guess, is truly my concern.
Yeah, the biggest issue is that a CCI is supposed to be on exclusion that's already occurring, whereas this is a spec where someone would go in and sign. They don't have exclusion right now, and they would sign up to get it.
Yeah,
right, so the CCI is a 50-cent maintenance for 5 years, correct? And that's all they get by linear foot, 50 cents per linear foot for 5 years. They're under contract, maintained it for 5 years, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
So this doesn't work well for renters who I have heard several times may lose the lease on their land, need to literally pull up what they put down. That wouldn't work in that situation, correct? To do it the way the CCI is structured?
Yes.
Which is why we ended up with the 1 year theoretical
lifespan.
Yeah.
Right. So I think in some ways using a 1-year practice that's renewable up to 5 years addresses the renter concern that has been raised several times rather than utilizing the language in the CCI.
Or it could be just renewable forever.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
Jim, and I agree with what she's saying, because keep in mind this is focused on the General Assembly bill with 20 or more bovines excluded, and so we know that there's a large number of cattle operations across the state that are on rental land. In fact, a significant number. So exactly what she just said. We've got to be able to have folks, and the portability is you lose the lease or you change or you don't rent the land anymore, you take the fence down, you move on. That's the portable, not necessarily moving from field to field in rotational grazing. And I do think, we've got 5 years to do this. And if we don't have something out there that they can use, that they'll put out there, we're not fulfilling what the intent of the legislation is. So
then can we even go to the 5-year option like we had talked about, like Charlie's suggestion?
You could. We don't know what's going to happen 5 years down the road, July 1, 2026.
Could we, and this is just a thought, and y'all might think it's dumb. What if there was a way that it was neither a year or 5 years, and it was like 2.5 years? Or just, if there was something in between.
We do have a 3-year practice.
Do we?
I'd rather keep it on an annual practice or a 5-year practice myself.
Which one is the 3-year?
It's a renewable thing.
Yeah, I think at this point, I think one thing we need to decide collectively as a group in order to make this sense moving forward is we really need to decide annual versus 5 years. So the benefit of the annual would be it would really serve the people that are doing rented land very, very well. They can sign up year after year as long as they had the lease. And it would be portable so that if they ever lost the lease, it could be taken off to Jim's concerns. However, we would not be getting credit for that. If we care about credit, then we want to do the 5-year. So either way, I think that we just need to make a decision. Each one has positives and negatives, but I think it's going to shape the rest of this conversation.
David, I would propose to the group that we could make it a 5-year practice, but if they lose the lease, then they're not held to the 5-year lifespan.
It'd be like a WP2 that gets wiped out in the flood. The district can forgive the license.
Right.
Excellent choice.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah.
And at that point, for the pennies on the foot, then you don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of trying to get reimbursed for 18 more months worth of lifespan. The farmer doesn't have to worry about it. The district doesn't have to worry about it. And they still have the materials that they can use to do stream exclusion somewhere else.
I think that's
I like that.
To that point, this is Anna. If they do get a new lease elsewhere, would they need to move that fencing to that new land and just continue the 5 years, or would that be optional?
The way the spec is written right now, they would have to, because it says that it moves with the herd. I think it's better if we write the spec so that it says it's field by field, like most of our other practices. But yes, to answer your question, they could take it with them and keep it with the herd.
I'd like to ask the question. So this is a mandate, so to speak, based on the whip articles from the assembly, right? If this is an attempt to try to get something in place so that by 2026, maybe this doesn't become enacted, why would we be doing anything that is not accruing credit? Does that make sense?
I think the threatened language makes reference to temporary fencing of perennial streams, whatever a perennial stream is, and the burden is on the landowner, not the renter. And at that point, I don't know to what extent credits in a bay model makes a difference, at least from the on the ground standpoint. And I don't think a renter with a portable stream fencing practice is terribly concerned about credits. I think we ought to strive to make a portable fencing practice that is of utility. We don't want to just go through this effort and it's not used, but we can't predict how it's going to be received with any precision. But we all on this call want to get livestock out of the stream through a voluntary mechanism. I've rambled on too far, Tim. You bring up good questions. Good questions. And yeah, if we can get bay credits in the Bay Basin, great, 5-year practice. Make it forgivable if the farmer loses the lease. I guess you could add in a statement that it's expected that the system is used on the new rental. In other words, it does continue with the herd, even if you lose the lease on one farm and move your herd and lease another farm. That might be a little tricky to work into spec, but I'm sure it can be done. Or we just drop it, and then they'll sign up for a new practice on the new farm that they have a lease. And yeah, we might be double paying.
Mark, you just made a point that I think is very important to consider, where you said it may be tricky to monitor whether or not the portable fence materials are in fact being moved with the herd. But that's what we're asking this spec to be, the way it's currently written.
Right. Oh yeah.
That's why I suggested that it be field by field, much like Elizabeth and Luke are saying, can we just get fence on every stream that a farmer's willing to put a fence on? And rather than it being the language in section B3, where it's based on the longest stretch of stream bank protected on one farm that the herd is on. If a farmer were to pick up that herd and move it to a completely different farm, even if that completely different farm has, say it's got 1,000 feet of stream bank instead of 2,000 feet of stream bank, if you drive by as a technician, how are you going to know whether or not that particular herd has been allocated funding to be excluded?
That is in the scenario where he loses the lease on one farm and moves it to the second.
No, I'm just saying that if a farmer has multiple fields, multiple farms that he moves that herd through, at any given point, how is the technician from the Soil and Water Conservation District going to know whether or not that herd they drive by is supposed to be excluded and whether or not there's supposed to be a fence?
We don't.
Which is why I think it should be a field by field practice.
We don't know.
It's got to be. You can't make somebody fence everything they have. You've got to give them the option to only do certain fields.
Well, the draft spec, the fencing goes with the herd. Now, they may have cows, different herds in all their fields on the farm, in which case measure the stream bank on every stream on the farm.
I am seeing this thing in a lot of practice specs where it talks about the herd. And I don't know that we have a real clear definition of what that means, because our definition of that and a farmer's are not going to be the same thing.
Well, you got to have the conversation and use your best technical judgment.
Well, if we took the tack that, you know, that we're talking portable in the sense of it can be removed from leased land if a lease ends. I mean, if the will of the subcommittee is such, I don't see it would be necessarily a bad thing to go to just field by field, which is consistent with VAX already. That's how we do it. And just allow it to be installed for that 5 years, then we get some credit for it. And then I still would think we need to talk a little bit more, you know, what happens when a lease is lost, whether we want to penalize or not. That would be a little bit of a departure from existing VAX guidelines. But I'm not opposed to it from my side.
This is Gary Boring. I was just wondering if a lot of the concerns have been about the cost of the fence, but if we fenced all the streams on the property at that 25 or 20 cents a foot rate, the system would be portable. They would have the flexibility to move it if they lose the lease. And if that wouldn't solve most everybody's concerns, I'm kind of like everybody else. I think if they're looking to move it each time they move their herd, then you're going to run into a lot of enforcement issues from the district standpoint of asking for money back.
This is Robert. Just, are we going to specify this is for leased land only? Yeah.
We tried that. When we talked about the rented land practice last year, we tried, and there was no way.
Well, that was something different. Yeah, that was something.
The notion is not on the table at the moment.
Yeah, I would think. I personally think, yeah, it should be the district's. If it's someone who owns the land, you're dealing with a landowner, and you're out there talking to them, you should pretty well be able to convince them, or hope to convince them, that the most economical way is to invest in a permanent fence. It would, you know, either stream access or water, because they're going to be out there, you know, picking up washed out fence all the time if it's, you know, just all temporary. So I can see it for leased land, but that's just my 2 cents. I'm gonna mute because then you phone.
And the market would settle that.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
This is Chris again. I'm gonna go back to Gary's comment. If that was the case and we were able to account for all streams on all fields of the rented tract or the farm, just say the farm, wouldn't that get more bang for the buck as a reporting mechanism instead of the longest stretch of stream that you would be reporting all stream fenced on the farm instead of the longest stretch?
I would think so, yeah. Yeah.
So the model would get more credit for what we're doing here if we are doing this practice on a yearly basis.
Then we're back.
I think if we've got 3 fields and each one of them's got streams of footage in it, and we're going to move the system, it keeps from having to move the system. Plus, we're getting the credit for all of the stream that is going to be fenced on the farm. And I know this is very important to the Chesapeake Bay model.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And then we have to start fooling with the cost, because we've got
20 cents a foot for the length of stream fencing. You would just go ahead and pay for the whole thing and tell them they have to put up temporary fence on all of it.
Well, the farmer might balk if you tell him that he's got to put up temporary fence or portable fencing on all of it when he moves his herd as a group from one field to the next. What's the point in leaving behind this portable fencing system in field A when all your cows are in field B?
Yeah, you could do either or, but
Either or, yeah.
either or. I guess I don't know how you would count all the streams that way, but I was just trying to make a clarification on the reporting thing.
Yeah, and we haven't dived into tracking and how this is to be managed in tracking by the districts.
Christine's just writing down some of the main points that have been made, so we can, since we've gotten to the point where we're going in circles a little bit, it seems like there's been some themes that have come out, so we're just trying to write them down.
I think this should be eligible for everybody. I mean, if we've got a producer who's hesitant about it anyway, but he's willing to try it on a temporary basis, then he'll get used to that and maybe want to go ahead and invest in the permanent fence. So I don't want to say that only people on rented land are eligible. I also don't want to require that they have to fence everything. It should only be what they're willing to fence, because some of it might not make sense, especially just for portable. And I know I said that they should get credit for everything, but I want to clarify that that's everything that they want to do, not that they have to do every water body to qualify. That wasn't my intent.
And that's, yeah, we're still field by field. And if they just want to sign up one field and put portable fencing there, then they're obliged to keep the livestock out of the water in that field for the lifespan. And if we're going toward a 5-year lifespan, it'd be the 5 years. And if he doesn't want to sign up field B and field C for whatever reason, that doesn't negate his ability to sign up for field A. Another
Are we
thing
still
to
going
note.
to tie to FSA fields?
No. We've gotten away from that for some years. Your districts are free to use FSA maps. They're oftentimes inaccurate or not truly up to date, and the conservation technician with the district is free to use their own judgment to discern what constitutes a field. And you might make reference to the guidance that was put out, I think, at least a year ago now, when we're dealing with buffer payments and whatnot. There was a FAQ section appended to that directive, and there's a discussion there about how fields might be discerned if you're independent of FSA designations. That is, tree lines, fence lines, crop versus pasture, crop versus hay. Use your judgment in the field to discern what constitutes a field for the purpose of VACs. So where are we now? I hear a general notion that we might go to a 5-year. If we gain some bay credits through RI, so much the better. That's not the driver. We need to balance the payment for this practice with the suite of existing stream fencing practices. I'm kind of intrigued by the notion that if a leaseholder loses their lease, that the district board have the ability to forgive the balance of the lifespan. That one might be a tough pill to swallow in some ways. Clearly, we need to make some changes to the draft, and it may not be too difficult to craft it in a manner such that it's a 5-year practice. But then we come down to the rate. And I think there was a good and legitimate concern to document the budget for installing portable fence, including the charger. We don't have it.
The fence charger definitely needs to be eligible if we're going to go that route.
Well, it certainly would be. eligible. We're not talking about eligibility of particular pieces of the system. We're paying on a stream bank protected. Nevertheless, what's a solar charger cost? What's a electrified, plug-in charger cost?
Well, I guess I should clarify what I meant to say was there's a difference between paying for length of stream bank protected and length of fence. And if you were paying by the foot of the fence, that gives you more of it makes it simpler to say, oh, well, the charger is also included. Because you're paying per foot of component.
Well, an awful lot of fence may be needed to exclude very little bit of stream.
That's true.
And the reverse is true as well. So the pattern for CCIs anyway has been to pay on the footage.
Well, didn't we have a question about how is this different than CCI? Well, that's how.
That could be the difference. What's the cost of a fence charger?
Like $300. Maybe
Depends on what you need that fence charger to do, Mark.
Oh yeah,
It depends on the size of the system.
Absolutely. You can get a Sears charger, or you can get a real charger.
But in all seriousness, an eligible cost, it would not hurt to say as a separate line item that the fence charger is an eligible cost up to X dollars. Because you could have a stream on a property that's only got 200 feet in one field. That's not going to even pay you enough to buy a good charger, let alone put up the fence and charge it.
Well, that's a good point. We could have a per foot payment plus the cost of a charger up to.
Yeah, we need this to be a simple but functional spec.
I think that's a good comment because a lot of these fence areas that we're looking to be fenced are going to be out there in the middle of nowhere, and they're going to be solar chargers, as the gentleman said, $250, $300 at least. So, and I really think we need to focus, number one, meet the requirement, and this should be a beginning for a producer to get into this to meet the requirement. And then third, we must, in all cases, focus on the cost of enticing a producer to fence out. If we're not enticing someone, we're missing the boat.
Right, and we have 19 other variations to entice at various costs and cost share reimbursement rates and so on and so forth. And this is, I still think it's a niche. Renters, dairymen wanting to flash graze a crop residue. It's not going to be for everybody by any stretch. And
but don't you think that producers who haven't been and maybe are not thinking about it, this would be their first step? And,
oh yeah.
I mean, and there's thousands and thousands of acres that are not fenced.
Yeah.
I just would focus on what we've been asked to do.
Yeah.
And what a portable stream fencing practice, which means portable can be removed. Really, I think we misinterpreted what portable meant. The focus when this went in was that this was something that could go somewhere else. It could be taken up and not just, rotating to a farm. So.
Fair enough. So in B3, we talk about a portable fencing system designed to be moved with the herd. And I think, Jim, your suggestion and others would be open to it, would be to dispense with that notion and to deal with field by field and not necessarily with the herd.
I think you're right, Mark. And then you could change B4 to say that a participant can sign up for portable fencing based on field or per field.
Well, yeah, that's a given. program. But yeah, that notion could be reinforced.
Well, rather than like both 3 and 4 refer to the herd. So
Yeah, right. And then when it comes to lifespan, could be 5 years. Could be a notion in there that can be forgiven if a lease is lost in those scenarios. Again, it's not just a leaseholder's practice alone, but in the event that it is, we could consider forgiving the deal if the lease is lost. But then a landowner employing the practice might cry foul if for whatever reason he goes bankrupt and loses the farm. So we got to think about that possibility.
And there's the hardship process.
There's a hardship for that person. Yeah. So maybe we don't have to fret over that scenario, but we could make clear that in the case of a leaseholder participating in this practice, if the lease is lost, the district board could forgive repayment.
What if you just worded it to say loss of control of the land? Because if they lost the farm through losing the lease or losing ownership of the farm, they lost control of the land.
Yeah, that would be a slick way of handling it. Or as David suggests, there is a hardship process in place now, applicable to all of our BMPs. I don't know how far we want to stray from the norm. That's above my pay grade. And the cost share rate, if it's a 5-year program, it may be that 20 cents is adequate if you add in up to $300 for appropriate fence charger. We're still not talking big bucks any way you look at it.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Chris again.
Yeah.
Me and Chance were just doing some figuring on a 1,650 feet of fence. And what I pay for a single strand polywire on post spacings at 25 feet. And these are the high dollar posts at $1.69 a post. And then a charger at $100, which is a 4D cell battery charger, or either you can hook it up to a 12-volt battery. And I use them all the time on my farming operation, and they work pretty good. I'm getting 17 cents a foot for the cost analysis on 1,650 feet of fence.
And that includes your charger?
That includes a $100 charger that runs on 4D cell batteries or either a 12-volt battery.
All right.
Did you include the cost?
How long does the batteries last?
4D cell batteries will last about 5 to 6 weeks.
Oh wow, that's a lot longer than I thought it would.
And it puts about 4,000 volts on about 1,000 feet of fence.
I did not know that.
They've got a cheaper charger in Rural King that's a Zebra that's $79. And I'm using a Speed Right. I've got Zebras, I've got Speed Rights. I've got several of these portable chargers. It does not include the reel. The reel's another $40. So if you put the polywire on a reel, you're just gonna have to add $40 into that cost analysis. But from what I'm seeing, doesn't include a solar charger. So the batteries are the thing that you do have to replace those. But that being said, it looks like 100% cost share in my book for what I use on my farm.
Some of us saw those D-cell chargers when we went to the fencing school for professionals at the research station. They were using those, if you remember.
I use them a lot around hay bales, and I use them a lot around. I've even got one line fence that's just all to pieces, and I use poly wire for that. And you know, it keeps the cows from. I say that, but it keeps the cows from going on the neighbors. But I'll say that they'll be out tonight.
Yeah, there's nothing without some maintenance. Well, that is very good information. That's one scenario, and not every place is going to be the same, but we just try to hit an average. Economy of scale makes a big difference. And none of our practices are all that precise as far as covering each individual applicant for the program. So that would argue for 20 cents a linear foot of stream bank. Well, no, you're predicating on linear feet of fence. You know, it might take 1,000 feet of fence to fence up the stream bank.
Yeah, I put the reel in the equation and allow $50 for the reel, and I'm getting right at 20 cents a foot.
All right. And in some cases, it takes 1,000 feet to fence out 200 feet of stream. In some cases, it might take 200 feet of fence to protect 1,000 feet of stream. You know, it's just every scenario is different, and we're not going to hit it perfect by any stretch. But is the group, by and large, comfortable with trying to massage this thing into a 5-year practice?
Yes.
I think it needs to stay 1 year.
I would support 1 year as well.
And then renewable?
I would go renewable as well. 1
year renewable?
I'm good with renewable, but make sure the producer understands they may not rank out and get funded in the subsequent years.
Absolutely. Maybe year 2 doesn't work, but year 3 does.
So the question I have
going back,
go ahead, Tim.
I was just say going back to that credit question. If it's a 1 year practice, is there any credit whatsoever assigned or gained?
I don't believe so. Yeah, that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the intent behind the drive to do this through this act was to put something in place that's not going to further us down the road towards our implementation plan. Just a thought.
This is Stephanie. I agree with Tim, and I would support the 5-year lifespan if there's that flexibility for renters.
Yeah, I truly don't know the intent of the General Assembly in regards to bay credit, but it's reasonable to assume they would wish there to be some credit. Let's see.
I agree with everybody that I think we need to do something that's going to get us some Bay model credits, and I like the 5-year option. I'm not sure how we would pay by the foot of something and then make it renewable, because your CCIs pay by, they're the renewable things or the maintenance things, and they're paying by foot of stream bank excluded. So if we wanted to make something renewable on an annual basis, you're almost going to have to recreate another practice to do that, the way we're trying to set this one up by paying on the foot. But I think this one should be paid on the foot because you're incentivizing new installation, and that matches more how our other practices are, is paying by the foot. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing.
No, I completely agree with everything you just said.
All right. So I'd like, yeah.
Do we get any, what kind of Bay model credits do we get for cover crop that is an annual practice?
I can't answer that off the top of my head, but evidently they're quite valuable in
They're very valuable. They're very valuable in the model. It appears to be because we've got districts that are doing cover crop only on a year-to-year basis.
That's right.
In the grain country, and
Yeah.
I don't understand why they can't change the model to give us some credit for this.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. But we are where we are.
You're coming from, Chris.
Yeah.
I will say, yeah. I mean, right now we've been told it's a 5-year practice to get that RI credit.
I think we're looking at different resource concerns. From cover crop, it's more of an erosion concern and nutrient, like from the erosion, whereas this is more of a direct deposit type stream bank issue fix, if that makes sense. The reason why one can be annual and the other one can't exactly be.
Well, I disagree with you because you put
I wouldn't say
you put 100 cows on 1,000 feet of stream, you're gonna have a lot more than just direct deposition.
Well, true. Yeah, especially if there's no buffer. We can't sell that right now.
I just think that's the premise behind the Bay model.
Let me pose this, see if we can't move this along. It's approaching. David, how many voting members are there with us at the moment? Did you say we had 18 check-in?
18, that's correct.
18. All right, so what I'm thinking of is perhaps we can formally vote on whether we want to go 5-year or annual, and see if we can at least then, as a consequence, focus on one or the other. And if we have 18 members present, 15 votes to discern our intention here. So if anyone wishes to go that route, would anyone wish to make a motion either say for let's focus on an annual practice that could be renewed on an annual basis, or let's focus on a 5-year practice so we maybe at least gain some pay credits, or however, whoever out there might wish to make a motion one way or the other.
Can we do both?
Can
we
you
make
do
two
both?
practices?
Now, that's not what I wanted to hear.
It's not what I wanted to say. I just, I mean, it seems like we're at an impasse. It's difficult to make a decision. I just figured, like what would happen if there was 2 of them.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we take a vote on whether or not we proceed with exploring a portable stream exclusion practice for credit, or explore the option of stream exclusion portable practice that is not for credit.
I guess I wanted to hear what the gentleman finished saying. I think you jumped ahead of him. He was saying 2 options, which was a motion, almost like a motion for one option and then the other option as well. I would think you'd want to.
Well, I never made a motion. I just said, like, what if we did that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to focus on one or the other. I mean, both are portable fencing. I think that the group needs to make a decision whether we're concerned more about the credit and a long-term practice, or whether we want to just do something that's annually renewable.
This is Charlie, and since I opened this 5-year can of worms, if we have the option of either through hardship or whatever, or forgiving the rest of it if a guy gets kicked off his land, I would go to the 5-year. I agree with everybody that said General Assembly probably wants us to get some credit for what we do, or they wouldn't have gone through the trouble to put this through.
All right, so I'm hearing a motion from Charlie Wooten, that we work on a design for a 5-year practice that gains, at least has the chance of gaining some Chesapeake Bay model credits. Is that fair, Charlie?
Clarification?
Yeah.
I mean, did he say that people would be able to exit the contract if they lose the land? I heard him sort of say that. I'm not sure that's what he meant. So, I mean, I can see that if someone could get out of it if they lose the land.
Yeah,
you know,
that is what I said, and I think even if we didn't do anything different, we could evoke the hardship, come to the board, hardship, I've lost the land, and be able to get out of it.
All right, so I'm hearing a motion that we focus on creating a 5-year practice in the hopes of getting some Bay model credits, conditional upon making clear that there's an option that if the participant loses control of the land, that the lifespan can be waived by the district.
That would be my motion.
All right, I will second that.
All right, so if we have 18 members, it might be simpler for me to ask if they're.
I think we have to have a roll call vote, Mark.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Rules.
Fair enough.
And Mark, before you do a roll call, can you read the full motion again?
That the committee focus its efforts at this point on creating a 5-year.
Christine's going to write it.
A 5-year practice games, Bay model credits, yeah, with a serendipitous, yes. Allowing the participant no, excuse me, Christine, allowing the district board to forgive the lifespan or waive the lifespan if the participant loses control of the land.
Do that anyway.
Yeah, in a sense, they can do that already potentially through the hardship. This would be a more direct route. Yeah. Charlie Wooten, fair enough?
Looks good to me.
It's been seconded by, was that Aaron?
Yeah.
So it's on the table. You've seen the motion. So David, go ahead with the roll call.
All right, sounds good. All right. Aaron Lucas?
Yes.
All right. Anna Kilias?
Yes.
Charlie Wooten?
Yes.
Chris Barber?
Yes.
Elizabeth Telliger?
Yes.
Eric Paulson?
Yes.
Gary Boring?
Yes.
Jim Riddell?
Yes.
Luke Longenecker?
Yes.
Matt Kowalski?
Yes.
Michael Tabor?
Yes.
Nick Lipsey?
Yes.
Robert Bradford?
Yes.
Stephanie Kitchen?
Yes.
Tim Higgs,
Yes.
Dean Cumbia filling in for Todd Grow,
Yes.
and Tricia Mays.
Yes.
All right, it is unanimous and the motion passes.
All right. With that motion, we can attempt a little bit of wordsmithing if you all dare. We have 1 hour, and I think the only other big hassle with this is dealing with the rate and dealing with payment based on fence footage or exclusion footage.
Hey, Mark, should we go ahead and do basically the same thing we just did based off of the pay by the foot of the fence or pay by the foot of the stream?
Fair enough. Now we're thinking it's standard field by field and paying by footage of fence. Strays from the CCI, but there's no reason we cannot, it seems to me.
I think in order for us to create a practice that offers something that CCI does not, we would need to pay by a foot of fence.
Elizabeth, do you want to give a motion?
Sure. I move that the subcommittee focus on a practice that will pay by foot of the fence instead of a by foot of stream bank protected basis.
Second to that.
All right, so Elizabeth makes a motion. Who was the second?
Jim Riddell.
Hey,
Jim Riddell.
can I ask a question real quick? Since y'all are going through a roll call vote, do you want to include something about the charger being up to an amount? Since we're talking about rates, or do you want to handle that in a separate vote?
I think when we go to talking about the actual rate, we can decide that. Right now, we're just deciding what payment basis we want to use.
Fair enough. We certainly have to deal with the charger. It doesn't have to be in this motion. It certainly could be.
Mark, point of discussion.
Yeah.
Do we need to specify at this point whether or not the practice is also going to be eligible field by field? Because I'm okay with the idea if we're looking at it on a field by field basis.
In other words, if I'm the farmer, you would tell me that one application per field, even though I have maybe multiple fields on my farm?
Well, he can decide which fields to enroll, yes.
No, it would be the same application, Mark. It's just how many fields does he want to include in that application?
Right.
And there's no prohibition from a person signing up for a single field. That's uniform throughout VACs.
The question is really whether the subcommittee, I thought I heard consent from everybody just based on questions, but if you want to vote, then go for it. Instead of it being by herd, the decision was going to be that the fences would be in, like the practice would be based field by field rather than by herd, correct?
Yes.
I would strongly suggest that we do it by field.
Hey, Mark.
I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I can amend my motion to say that the practice be paid on a field by field basis by foot of fence.
Yes, because our draft right now makes reference to, herd.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. That was exactly my concern. So thank you for solving that.
Yep.
I second that motion.
And if this draft is changed to where we have no longer a reference to herd, then it's a moot point. It'll be field by field, but I think this is fine. Any other thoughts on the motion that's on the table? Then I think
the foot of fence payment is based on the technician's recommendation on where the fence is going, or are we just saying build it wherever and we'll pay you for it?
That is a sticky point because I might want to run my fence to fence out all sorts of additional woodlands or stretch it over hither and yon, whereas the least cost technically feasible option would be to run a straight line to capture all the meanders of the stream. Or farmer might say, well, I want to parallel the stream, and so that's more payment. I don't have an answer to that. But I think that's the point.
That's going to vary case by case, and I'd like, my motion stops with a period after foot of fence, not based on technician's recommendation.
Yes. Yeah, I think that districts are obliged to follow the concept of least cost technically feasible. And it's always a matter of negotiation, and it's virtually impossible to express that in words in a B&P spec.
I agree. Let's keep it as is, and maybe we put a note later on in the spec.
Yeah.
I mean, is it not the same interpretation as every other exclusion spec, though, Luke?
That's
a fair point, Elizabeth.
Correct. Fair point. Any other thoughts on the motion? Any other discussion? Or are you ready for a vote? Hearing none, let's go ahead for a vote. If you take the roll, David, please.
All right, sounds good. So we're voting on the subcommittee directs the practice to be paid on a field-by-field basis and by foot of fence. So we'll start off, Aaron Lucas.
Yes.
Hesitates.
All right, Anna Kilias.
Yes.
Carly Wooten.
Yes.
Chris Barber.
Yes.
Elizabeth Dellinger.
Yes.
Eric Paulson.
Yes.
Gary Boring.
Yes.
Jim Riddell.
Yes.
Luke Longenecker.
Yes.
Matt Kowalski.
Yes.
Michael Tabor.
Yes.
Nick Lipsey.
Yes.
Robert Bradford. Robert Bradford. All right, we'll see if he pops back in or not. Otherwise, I can count him as abstain. Stephanie Kitchen.
Yes.
Oh, there
Yes,
you go.
yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Robert. Stephanie.
Yes.
Okay. Tim Higgs.
Yes.
Dean Cumbia for Todd.
Yes.
And Trisha Mays.
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous.
Hey, Dave.
Passes.
Dave, this is Brian Hoffman. Been on the call for a while. Just want to be included in the roll call.
Oh, good, Brian. Hey,
You're on. Brian Hoffman.
Yes.
Great.
I apologize, Brian. I did not realize you had joined us. Welcome. All right, so 5-year practice, pay on foot of fence. What else do we need to? The rate, consideration of charger. Let's see. Our B9 practice only eligible for re-enrollment. That's well, now I guess we could, like other CCIs, the participant could re-enroll after the 5 years. So we don't have to eliminate B9 entirely, but would have to reword it. Perhaps the other major thing we need to decide by a vote at this point would be the rate in the charger. And then perhaps we can go into wordsmithing.
I thought we wanted to have a little more time to research, review the papers from extension before we decided on a rate.
Fair enough. That was a notion expressed earlier.
And Mark, I also wonder how we would do a re-enrollment of this practice since we're paying by foot of fence. Wouldn't they then have to go to a CCI? And
Yes.
depending on how industrious they went with their portable fencing, they may or may not qualify for a CCI.
Well, there's no standard on a CCI.
Well, we do need to distinguish this, I think, from CCI.
Right, so I don't think the notion that this practice is re-enrollable is still an option.
Well, portable fencing is, and even if you want to call it temporary, is somewhat ephemeral. And the question then is, once this lifespan is expired, would the person be eligible to sign up for CCI SE1? And I think the notion with SE1 was that it was a pre-existing fence to no practice standard, and so it's difficult to say no.
Yeah, by the language of the spec, Mark, I would say that it is, and that's one other reason I didn't bring it up, but when we were talking about the lifespan being 1 year versus 5, I was concerned that people might do 1 year and then try to enroll it in the CCI SE1 after just 1 year. And I think by doing a 5-year lifespan and then letting them enroll in CCI SE1, that's fine.
That's fair.
You just said after the 5 years, the CCI SE1 would be eligible?
That's correct.
That makes sense.
All right. So if we're not ready to discuss a per foot payment because the group wishes to have more research presented, that's going to take some time and would necessitate a second meeting of the group, it would seem to me.
Mark, I think we're still going to have a second meeting of the group because somebody's going to have to help with wordsmithing. I doubt we could do that in 45 minutes.
Oh, come on, ye of little faith. You're probably right.
I know this group.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already spent 3 hours or 2 hours just deciding what basis we're going to go with. So
yeah,
actually, where is it implemented? And I mean, to be quite honest, this spec probably going to have to go back and pull a lot more from like a SL6N than a CCI at the present moment.
Well, we're not offering any watering system. That's still up to the participant. And so we're thinking stream access. Any thoughts, David, Christine?
Well, I mean, I guess maybe just to make sure the wording is consistent. I'm not saying that we're offering any of that, just for consistency in wording.
Right.
Yeah, what we'll probably do is take the WP2N, which is probably the closest thing we've got, and do a little rewording based on the votes that just occurred, and go from there. But yes, we could do it and with y'all's blessing and just bring it to the full TAC at the same time. If y'all want to go through everything, with the second meeting, that's fine too. But we'll probably take the WP2N and work these votes into it.
I'd propose that you guys, you DCR staff, take the WP2N and make the
needed modifications, and let's discuss that at the next meeting. And maybe in the meantime, y'all can have sent out the BCE publication and we can have more time to think about a rate. And so we can wordsmith and define a rate at the next meeting.
I was hoping you would do that, Elizabeth.
No, that's all you, Mark.
I think that's fair.
Hey, Mark,
And yes, Matt.
regarding the rate, and I'll just toss this out as another option, since most of the practices that include materials as infrastructure, the rates are decided by the local soil and water conservation district. That could be an option for this spec as well.
Frankly, I prefer to avoid getting into cost share rates and references to, and the subsequent references to NRCS practices.
No, I don't mean rates and percentages. I mean simply saying that, you know, each district could say, we know what the cost of materials tend to be in our area, so it's reasonable to construct a temporary fence for X dollars a foot.
Hey, Matt, the way the system is set up, basically the only way we do that is to go to an actual cost share practice, which again, we'd have to compare to the WP2N, and it's 55% rate, so I don't know we want to go that route. I mean, that's essentially what we do now, that all the different districts set their local rates, but we have a standard cost share percentage.
Right. And you'll have the fellow saying, I want a temporary fence of this standard that's $2 a foot, that's $1 a foot, and the other guy's willing to do a true portable at 20 cents a foot or whatever. And the cost share program is going to choke on how to handle that.
Well, I think your pay by foot of fence is going to choke on how to handle that too.
Well,
fair enough. Yeah, I was just trying to give you guys an option so that it could be something we wouldn't have to come back with all the research and trying to figure out how to deal with fluctuating market costs.
Hey, Matt, this is Charlie. As opposed to having contractors and stuff doing this, you're looking at a guy buying whatever he's going to buy, a T-post, step-in post. You know, if you look on Southern States of Tractor Supply, that stuff is pretty standard statewide. So I feel comfortable setting a rate that would be statewide. We're not looking at labor. We're not looking at that. We're looking at stuff that's pretty much available, and the price of it is pretty stable statewide at your chain stores.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. I was just throwing another option out there, Charlie.
And I think that the district staffer will be making an entry in tracking that is foot of fence or something like that. And then the magic of computer world will apply an agreed upon rate to that footage. And so in that way, the tracking program updates will be far more simpler than if districts have differing rates.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, it's gonna be an average. Some people will do well, some people won't. Economy of scale is everything. So let's see, where were we going? I think it was Elizabeth that suggested the DCR internal team rework this WP2P with the changes suggested by our 2 votes, rework the draft, send it out along with any kind of economic model or budget data that Jim Riddell desired, and I would want to accommodate what Chris had brought forth from the great Southwest Virginia. Whatever data we can provide that we would hope provide comfort to the group to settle on a rate. It may or may not include a charger, but we could leave that to a second meeting. That's what I'm hearing. Is that fair enough? We'll do the wordsmithing offline for the time being to create a second draft.
Yeah, y'all create the second draft and then we'll see what we like and wordsmith it after in the second meeting.
I don't know if we need to take a vote on that. We'll just do it. Christine, are we okay just doing it?
Yeah, you can just do it.
All right, we'll just do it. Well, is that all that we can do at this time? David, are you satisfied?
Yeah, I think we have a place to go, and we put something out and got some good ideas in, and I think we can make this work and pump something out in the next couple weeks.
Are we? I have not checked the chat box myself. Do we have any conversation there that we need to consider?
No.
Okay. No comment from the public at this point. Everybody is satisfied? Then if no one thinks it's inappropriate, I would suggest that we close this meeting and let us set, well, actually, we've got a date in mind for a second electronic meeting of this group. And that date is Wednesday, October 7th. That date was chosen because that was an original full TAC date. Now, as far as the time, it could be 1 to 4. Again, if that suits most.
If it works for the subcommittee, all of our TAC meetings this year are at 1, so it'd be easy to remember.
All right. Well, let's go with a second meeting of this group on October 7th. Again, we'll schedule it 1 to 4. And in the interim, our little internal DCR group will work on another second draft and get that out to you at least a week or two. Let's say it's 50. I would hope we can get that out to you at least a full week for the 7th of October. Is that fair enough?
And Mark, did I hear somebody say that you guys would include language that includes the purchase of the fence charger, just you don't have a cost for that yet?
Well, Matt, one of the reasons we're going to have a second meeting, aside from the fact that we don't have enough time to wordsmith it at the moment, is that there was interest in getting some budgetary data together to help us all gain comfort at whatever rate it is that we choose. Now, that may accommodate a charger or not, but I think we could handle that at the next meeting. Now,
okay.
We could put it in the draft that it's X dollars per linear foot plus up to $200 for a charger. I mean, that could be that's simple. And if you don't like it at the next meeting, we'll take it out or monkey with it then.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I heard that discussion correctly. So thanks, Mark.
Okay, yeah, we'll deal with the rate section in essence at the next meeting. All right. Well, I thank you all. And I'm so glad so many of our committee turned out. I think, were we only missing Tom Turner? I don't think he ever checked in. And so that's darn good participation. And I hope everyone feels as though they had a chance for input. I think we did hear from most everybody, and I appreciate it very much. And so I think David and Christine, we can close this meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
You bet.
Thanks, everybody.